Love. We speak about it as though it's something we can plan, negotiate, or logically understand. We tell ourselves that love begins when two people share common values, when there's mutual attraction, when timing is right, and to an extent that's true. But if you've ever been in a relationship where everything seemed to line up, great chemistry, flowing conversation, even shared dreams, only to watch the connection dissolve for reasons you couldn't explain, then you know something deeper is at play. The truth is, real love, the kind that changes people, rarely begins on the surface. It doesn't start with what's obvious. It doesn't start with effort or devotion or even compatibility. Love, as Carl Jung insightfully revealed, begins in the unconscious. It begins in the mysterious and unseen parts of us that are far older than our conscious mind. Parts that carry archetypes, hidden desires, and unresolved fragments of the soul. For most women, this idea feels almost counterintuitive. Many are taught from an early age that love is nurtured by effort, by giving, caring, proving worth, showing loyalty. And while care and effort are important, they are not the spark. They are not the reason a man falls deeply and inexplicably in love. What awakens love in him is not what you do or say. It is what you unknowingly represent to him. This is the paradox. Often the less a woman tries to be chosen, the more unforgettable she becomes. It is not indifference. It is authenticity. It is the silent energy she carries when she no longer betrays herself for the sake of being wanted. And in that state, something profound happens. She stops being a person in his eyes and begins to take on the form of a symbol, an archetype, something his unconscious recognizes before his mind does. Carl Jung called this archetypal projection. Archetypal projection, the hidden spark. When we meet someone who deeply moves us, it's rarely about who they are in their day-to-day humanity. It's about what they awaken in us. A man might look at a woman and not just see a woman. He sees an image, an energy, a reflection of something that has been dormant within him. She becomes a mirror of his inner world, often a mirror of his anima, the feminine aspect of his unconscious. And here's the remarkable part. This process is not conscious. He may never realize it. He might not be able to articulate why he can't stop thinking of her, why she lingers in his mind long after she's gone. But the truth is, what he cannot let go of isn't her smile, her words, or even her body. It's what she stirred within him. If you've ever had someone reappear in your life months or even years after things ended, if you've ever been unforgettable without doing anything extraordinary, it's likely because you triggered something far beyond surface attraction. You became a symbol, and no one forgets the mirror that first showed them their soul. Why men pull away from deep connection. This is why some men retreat when love becomes real. It's not because they don't feel, it's because they feel too much. When a woman unknowingly embodies a part of his unconscious he hasn't yet integrated, she represents both desire and danger. To be near her means to face himself, to confront wounds, emptiness, and truths he may not be ready to see. So what does he do? Often he runs. But here's what's essential to understand. He's not running from her. He's running from what she awakens inside him. That's why rejection in these cases is not personal. It's psychological. And yet most women don't see it this way. Instead, they assume they weren't enough. That maybe if they had tried harder, given more, played fewer games, or been more patient, things would have worked. But love isn't sustained by effort alone. If effort were the formula, then every devoted partner would experience lasting passion. But as we know, that isn't true. What sustains deep attraction and devotion is not control. It's mystery. The mystery that awakens love. Here's the paradox Jung helps us see. Men do not fall in love with what they fully understand. They fall in love with what they cannot completely grasp. They fall for what shakes their inner framework. They fall for the woman who doesn't just offer love, but who radiates presence, calm, authentic, whole within herself. And this is where so many women unintentionally lose their spark. Out of fear of losing him, they begin to abandon themselves. They start molding their energy to fit his expectations, silencing parts of themselves to keep the connection alive. But here's the truth. The moment she betrays herself is the moment the mystery begins to fade. Not because she isn't valuable, but because the very authenticity that made her magnetic has dimmed. It's not perfection that makes her unforgettable. It's her essence, her refusal to compromise her truth. The woman who doesn't need to be chosen. Think about this. The most unforgettable women are rarely the most beautiful, the most flawless, or even the most accommodating. They are the ones who belong to themselves first. They are the women who carry a calm certainty, a quiet strength, and a presence that says, without words, I do not need to be chosen. I choose myself. To the masculine unconscious, that energy is both magnetic and deeply disorienting. Why? Because most men have been conditioned to connect with women who need them, who lean on them, who idolize them. And when a man encounters a woman who doesn't seek validation, who doesn't make him the center of her worth, he feels disarmed. This is often where the obsession begins, not with her as a person, but with trying to regain the control her presence shattered. He doesn't realize it consciously, but he is drawn not just to her but to the inner transformation she represents, why she becomes unforgettable. This is why some men never truly move on from certain women. It's not because she was perfect. It's not because she said all the right things or did everything right. It's because her presence was a turning point, a mirror, a catalyst for something within him that had long been asleep. He may distract himself. He may seek other women. He may bury himself in work or distractions. But none of it erases what she triggered. Because what she awakened wasn't external, it was internal. She was the beginning of a new chapter in his psyche, even if he didn't understand it at the time. A different way to see love. And so, the story of love is not just about two people finding each other. It's about what they awaken in one another. For a man, falling deeply in love is not about finding the woman who gives the most or tries the hardest. It's about encountering a woman whose presence reflects a part of himself he has yet to claim. And for a woman, the key isn't to try harder to hold his attention. It's to stop trying to be anything other than her authentic self. Because when she lives in her truth, when she refuses to betray herself out of fear of losing him, something shifts. She becomes magnetic without effort. That is the great paradox. The woman who no longer seeks to be chosen becomes unforgettable. We have explored how love doesn't begin on the surface, but in the unconscious. We saw how a woman's authenticity, not her effort, creates a magnetic energy that awakens something in a man. Now let's go deeper into what actually happens in that moment. Why does her presence feel unforgettable? Why does he struggle to move on, even when he tries? The answer lies in one of Carl Jung's most profound insights. We don't fall in love with people as they are. We fall in love with what they represent to us. Archetypes and the unconscious attraction. Every man carries within him a hidden image of the feminine. Jung called this the anima, the archetypal feminine. Energy that lives in his unconscious. It's not a literal woman, but rather a symbolic figure composed of everything he's absorbed about. Femininity since childhood, his mother, his culture, the women he admired, his wounds, his unmet needs, and his longings. When he meets a woman who unknowingly embodies aspects of his anima, something electric happens. She feels strangely familiar, as if she's always been there. He can't explain it, because it isn't logical. It's archetypal. This is why a man may meet many women who are kind, loving, and beautiful, yet remain untouched at the soul level. Then suddenly one woman appears, and she stirs something ancient inside him. She feels different. Not because she is objectively better, but because she resonates with an image buried in his unconscious. It is not love at first sight. It is recognition at first sight. Why he can't forget her. Once this recognition occurs, she stops being just a person to him. She becomes a symbol, and symbols live far longer than surface attractions. Think of it this way. If someone asked you why you remember a particular dream from years ago, you might not be able to explain it. The details may be hazy, yet the feeling lingers. That dream left a mark, not because of its events, but because of its symbolism. The same happens when a woman unconsciously embodies a man's anima. She lingers. He can't quite shake her image, her voice, her energy, not because she was flawless, but because she activated a deep psychic process. Sometimes he may not even like this. He may find himself irritated, restless, even haunted by her memory. And yet he cannot fully let her go. Why? Because she became the mirror of a part of himself he had long avoided. When love feels like disruption, it's important to understand that when a man pulls away from a woman who awakened him, it is rarely about her. It is about what she represents. Her presence disrupts his old sense of identity. For years, he may have defined himself in certain roles. The protector, the strong one, the one who leads emotionally. But when he encounters a woman who does not need rescuing, who doesn't collapse into dependence, who carries her own quiet strength, suddenly his framework begins to crumble. He feels something new, vulnerability. And for many men, vulnerability feels like danger. It threatens the identity they've built. So instead of leaning into it, they retreat. They convince themselves she's too much, too complicated, too mysterious. But deep down, what they're afraid of is not her. It's what they feel when they're with her. This is why some men appear to sabotage the very connections that could have transformed them. They are not rejecting her. They are rejecting their own reflection. Why she must not betray herself. Now here is where many women unintentionally shift the story. When a man pulls away, her natural impulse is to try to hold on. She gives more, softens more, compromises more, hoping that if she proves her devotion, he will return. But this is the trap. Because in doing so, she begins to betray herself. She begins to dim the very authenticity that made her magnetic in the first place. And once that authenticity is lost, the unconscious spark fades. He no longer sees her as a symbol of his anima. She becomes just another woman trying to please him, and the mystery dissolves. This is why the most unforgettable women are not the ones who fought to stay, but the ones who walked away with dignity. Not because they didn't care, but because they refused to abandon themselves. And that refusal, that rare act of self-honor, leaves a mark on his soul that no begging ever could. The scar that never heals. Here is the paradox. The woman who leaves to protect her essence often leaves a deeper scar than the one who stays and compromises herself. Why? Because she becomes the one who slipped through his fingers, not due to conflict or betrayal, but because she simply chose herself. That act of quiet strength becomes unforgettable. Months, even years later, he may still think of her. Not because he can't find someone else, but because no one else reflected that same part of his unconscious. No one else forced him to confront himself the way she did. It is not her beauty he remembers. It is the mirror she held up to his soul. Love is transformation, not comfort. This is why deep love is so rare and so unsettling. Real love isn't comfortable. It doesn't leave us unchanged. It shakes us. It reveals the hidden corners of our psyche. It forces us to ask questions we've long avoided. When a woman embodies her authenticity without apology, she becomes not just a partner, but a catalyst. She awakens in him the potential for transformation. And that transformation is terrifying, because it demands surrender, vulnerability, and change. Many men, when faced with this, pull away. Not because they don't feel love, but because they do. Because that love is too alive, too disruptive, too real. And so he runs. But here's the secret. He isn't running from her. He is running from the part of himself she revealed. The silent power of authenticity. So what does this mean for a woman? It means that her power lies not in convincing him to stay, not in proving her worth, not in sacrificing herself for love. Her power lies in authenticity. When she belongs to herself first, she radiates an energy that no man can ignore. Not because she is trying to be unforgettable, but because she is living in her truth. And truth, when embodied, is magnetic. This is why some women never realize the impact they had. They may think they left unnoticed. that their absence didn't matter. But deep down, in the psyche of the man they touched, their image lingers like a symbol, like a dream he can't shake. Because once a mirror has been shown, it cannot be unseen. When she leaves, something strange happens. At first, he may convince himself it's just another ending, another chapter closed, another story that didn't work out. He tells himself he'll move on the way he always has. With distractions, with other women, with work, with noise. But then, days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and somewhere in the quiet, her presence lingers. He feels it in his chest, in his thoughts, in the dreams that catch him off guard. She is gone, and yet she is not. Why? Because what left wasn't just her physical presence. What left was a symbol, the mirror of his own, unconscious, that she unknowingly carried. Why he can't let go. For most men, losing a woman who embodied this archetypal role feels different than losing anyone else. It's not simply heartbreak. It's a rupture. It feels as though the fabric of his identity has been torn, because she wasn't just another partner. She was the embodiment of something hidden within him. So while on the outside he may appear composed, inside he is haunted. He replays conversations. He remembers small gestures. He relives moments of silence between them, and none of it brings him peace. Because what he misses is not just her. It's what he felt in himself when he was with her. And this is why he can't forget. He may try to replace her with someone else, but replacements never work. Other women may offer beauty, kindness, even devotion, but none of them awaken the same hidden image. None of them stir his unconscious in the same way. And so he compares without meaning to compare, measures without meaning to measure. And in doing so, he realizes something painful. She was not like the others. Obsession begins with the unexplainable. This realization can quickly turn into obsession. He may check her social media, wonder where she is, or think of calling her late at night. He may even convince himself he wants her back. But here's the truth. What he is chasing is not her. What he is chasing is the feeling she awakened. It is not love in the ordinary sense. It is the psychic intensity of encountering a mirror for the first time. And because he doesn't fully understand this, he becomes restless, confused, even consumed by her memory. This is why Jung said, "What we repress becomes our destiny." A man who refuses to integrate the part of himself she revealed will forever feel pulled toward her image, even in her absence. The fear that drove him away. Ironically, the very thing that made him run is the same thing that now keeps him tied to her. When he first felt the depth of connection, he ran out of fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being vulnerable, fear of surrendering to something he could not label or manage. But after she leaves, that fear transforms into longing. Now, instead of fearing her presence, he fears her absence. This is the paradox of deep love. It terrifies us when it is near, and devastates us when it is gone. The woman who chooses herself. For the woman, this is where dignity becomes her greatest strength. When she leaves without begging, without blaming, without trying to twist herself into someone she is not. She leaves a mark. At first, he may interpret her calm silence as coldness. He may even feel anger that she didn't fight for him. But in time, he realizes that her leaving was not rejection. It was self-respect. And that realization stings in a way that no argument ever could. Because somewhere in his unconscious, he knows the truth. She didn't leave because she wasn't enough. She left because she refused to betray herself. And that truth makes her unforgettable. The scar is a turning point. This is why some men carry the memory of such a woman like a scar. They may move on, they may marry, they may build new lives. But in the quiet moments, her image returns. Not because they want her back, but because she represents the turning point, the before and after of their inner world. She was not just another chapter. She was the axis upon which the entire story turned. For many men, this scar becomes the first step toward awakening, because no matter how much they try to forget, they cannot erase the questions she left behind. Why did I need her so much? Why did her absence hurt more than others? What part of me did she reflect? And slowly, painfully, he begins to realize it was never about her alone. It was about him. Love as a mirror of the self. This is Jung's deepest teaching on love. We do not love people for who they are, but for what they reflect to us about ourselves. That woman he could not let go of was not simply the woman she appeared to be. She was a living mirror of his anima, of his unconscious feminine, of the parts of himself he had long denied. And until he accepts that truth, he will never truly be free of her. Why men return. This is why some men return after months, even years. They may not even know why. They may tell themselves it's about unfinished business, or that they still love her. But deep down, it's because they have been unable to integrate the part of themselves she awakened. They return not just for her, but for the mirror she represents. And this is where many women face a choice. Because if she has grown, if she has deepened her authenticity, she may see that his return is not about real partnership, but about his longing to re-experience what he lost. And if she understands this, she doesn't fall back into the old cycle. She sees with clarity, he is not seeking her, he is seeking himself. The silent power of departure. Here lies the paradox. Her departure, which may have once felt like an ending, is often the very thing that begins his inner transformation. Without the loss, he would never have been shaken. Without the silence, he would never have questioned. This is why Jung often emphasized that awakening rarely begins with joy. It begins with rupture. It begins with the collapse of illusions. And for many men, the collapse begins with the absence of the woman who once reflected their soul. The beauty and the tragedy. The beauty of this process is that it plants a seed of awakening. The tragedy is that many men resist it. Instead of integrating the lesson, they bury it. They numb themselves. They tell themselves it was just bad timing or just another relationship. But the unconscious doesn't forget. The symbol remains alive, and sooner or later, it will resurface, either in dreams, in restlessness, or in the ache of something unnamed. Because once the soul has been touched, it can never return to sleep. Up until now, we've seen what happens when a woman, living in her truth, awakens something powerful in a man's unconscious. We've seen how he may run from the intensity of that connection, only to find himself haunted by her absence, unable to fully move on. But this story doesn't end in longing. For some men, this is where the real journey begins. Because love, especially the kind that shakes the soul, is never just about the other person. It is always at its core about the self. And when the image of her lingers, when her memory burns like an unanswered question, he is faced with a choice, to keep running or to turn inward. The collapse of old masks. Carl Jung spoke often about masks, what he called the persona. These are the identities we wear to survive. The confident man, the strong protector, the one who never needs help, the one who never falls too deeply. For years, perhaps his whole life, he may have lived behind this mask. But when he met her, something cracked. Her presence revealed the cracks he had worked so hard to hide. And when she left, those cracks widened into fractures. This collapse is painful. At first, it feels like failure. He tells himself he should have been stronger, that he shouldn't miss her, that he shouldn't let someone affect him this much. But the truth is undeniable. The mask no longer fits. He can no longer pretend to be untouched. And in this collapse lies an opportunity, the beginning of reflection. In the silence of her absence, questions begin to surface. Not just about her, but about himself. Why did I feel so powerless around her? Why did I both want her and fear her at the same time? What emptiness did she expose in me? At first, these questions feel unbearable. He may try to silence them with distractions, but they return, louder each time. And eventually, if he dares to listen, something shifts. He realizes it was never about needing her back. It was about needing to face himself. The pain of realization. This realization cuts deep, because for the first time, he sees that his longing was not just for her presence, but for the parts of himself he had repressed. She had embodied intuition, freedom, authenticity, qualities he admired but had not integrated within. Her calm independence revealed his hidden fears. Her refusal to need him exposed his own need to be needed. Her authenticity illuminated the ways he had betrayed himself for control, validation, or approval. And so, the pain he feels is not just heartbreak. It is the grief of meeting himself for the first time. The path of individuation. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole by integrating the hidden parts of ourselves. For a man touched by such a woman, individuation begins not with inspiration, but with loss. Her departure becomes the doorway. If he accepts the invitation, he begins to see that she was never just a lover. She was a symbol, a mirror, a catalyst. She didn't enter his life to complete him. She entered to awaken him. And the only way to honor that awakening is not to chase her back, but to turn inward, to begin the slow, uncomfortable work of integrating the parts of himself he projected onto her. From obsession to understanding. At first, the pull toward her feels obsessive. He wants her voice, her touch, her presence. But as he reflects, the obsession transforms into something different. Understanding. He begins to see that what captivated him was not just her, it was what she represented. She was freedom. She was authenticity. She was calm strength. And the reason he couldn't let go was that he had not yet found those qualities in himself. And here lies the paradox. The more he integrates these qualities, the less he clings to her. Not because she no longer matters, but because he no longer feels incomplete without her. She shifts in his memory from a wound to a teacher, from longing to gratitude. The woman who transformed without staying. For her, this part of the story often remains invisible. She may never know the impact she had. She may believe she left unnoticed, that her choice to honor herself went unappreciated. But in truth, she planted a seed. Her calm departure, the door closed without blame, without begging, became the lesson he could not forget. She didn't transform him by staying. She transformed him by leaving. The masculine awakens. As he walks the path of individuation, his relationship to love changes. No longer is he searching for a woman to fill the void, to validate him, to reflect only the parts of himself he is comfortable with. He begins to understand that love is not about possession. It is about reflection and growth. He no longer sees women as saviors, nor does he fear the ones who carry their own strength. Instead, he begins to honor them, not for what they give him, but for who they are. And in this shift, he discovers something radical. Real love is not born of lack. It is born of wholeness, the inner alchemy. This process is slow. It does not happen overnight. There are setbacks, resistances, temptations to run back into old patterns. But with each step, he becomes more authentic, more whole. And one day, he realizes something profound. The very qualities that captivated him in her. The calm, the freedom, the authenticity are now alive within him. He no longer needs to chase them outside himself. He carries them inside. This is the alchemy of love. It transforms not just relationships but souls, from scar to compass. In the end, her image no longer haunts him as it once did. Instead, it guides him. She is no longer the wound he tries to heal. She is the compass that points him back to himself. And whether she knows it or not, she became the turning point of his life. Not because she stayed, not because she bent herself to fit him, but because she chose herself, and in doing so, gave him the gift of awakening. The quiet revolution. This is the quiet revolution that takes place in a man touched by an authentic woman. He begins to see that love is not about control, not about filling emptiness, not about being chosen. It is about awakening, about becoming whole. And in that awakening, he is never the same again. Every story of love has two arcs. The outer one we live with another, and the inner one we live with ourselves. By now, it is clear that the true power of this connection was never in whether they stayed together or parted ways. Its power lived in what it awakened. For her, the lesson was about sovereignty. For him, it was about awakening. And together, even in separation, they wrote a story neither would ever forget. The woman's continuation. When she walked away, it was not with bitterness. It was with clarity. She had seen what happens when a woman abandons herself in the name of love, and she chose differently. She chose authenticity over attachment, wholeness over compromise. At first, she may have doubted herself. She may have wondered if her silence made her cold, if her refusal to beg made her heartless. But over time, She saw the truth. Her dignity was not cruelty, it was love of self. And because she loved herself enough to walk away, she remained free. Free to grow, free to deepen, free to embody her authentic essence without distortion. Her life did not pause in his absence. She continued to expand, to create, to love in new ways. And though he lingered in her memory, she carried no regret. Because what they shared was not wasted. It was a mirror, a reminder, a gift, the man's transformation. For him, the journey was slower, heavier, more inward. At first, her absence burned like loss. But with time, the fire became a lantern. What began as heartbreak transformed into reflection, then into awakening. He learned that his longing was not just for her, but for the hidden parts of himself she revealed. And as he walked the path of integration, he discovered a truth he had never considered before. She had not broken him, she had opened him. He became less afraid of vulnerability, less enslaved to control, less obsessed with possession. He began to live with more authenticity, more honesty, more depth. And though part of him wished she had stayed to see this transformation, he also understood. Her role was not to walk the path for him. Her role was to ignite it. The meeting of gratitude. Sometimes life allows such people to meet again. Not always. Not in the way the heart once imagined, but enough to see one another with new eyes. And when it happens, it is not about rekindling what was lost, but about honoring what was given. If their paths crossed years later, the conversation would be simple, almost quiet. No drama, no tension, just gratitude. He might say, "You changed me," and she might smile and answer, "You awakened me too." Because the truth is, she had also grown. She had also been touched by his presence, challenged by his mirror, transformed by his intensity. The difference was that she had chosen to keep walking when he could not. And that choice made all the difference. When they never meet again. But even if life never allowed them to meet again, the story would remain alive within them. Not as longing, not as regret, but as a turning point. For her, he was the reminder that love must never cost her truth. For him, she was the catalyst who turned his mask into a mirror. And in that way, they would always be connected. Not through possession, not through permanence, but through transformation. The paradox of love. This is the paradox Jung understood so deeply. Real love is not about holding on. It is about awakening the soul. Sometimes that awakening happens in togetherness, sometimes in separation. But either way, it leaves us changed. We may not always get the ending our hearts once desired, but if we are honest, we receive something far more enduring. A deeper relationship with ourselves. And from that place, we are capable of loving more freely, more truthfully, more wholly than before. A story larger than two people. Perhaps the greatest realization is this: their story was never just about them. It was about the timeless dance of masculine and feminine, of conscious and unconscious, of projection and integration. She carried the mirror. He carried the mask. Their meeting shattered illusions and revealed truths neither could ignore. And in that collision, something eternal unfolded, the archetypal drama of love as a force of awakening. This is why such encounters feel larger than life. Because they are. They are not merely personal. They are mythic. They remind us that we are not just individuals falling in and out of love. We are souls, meeting to awaken one another, to reveal what lies hidden, to call each other into wholeness. The final lesson. And so, the final lesson is simple, though not easy. We do not always get to keep the ones who awaken us. Sometimes their role is not to stay, but to open the door. Sometimes their gift is not presence, but absence. The man who once feared her depth became a man unafraid of his own. The woman who once gave too much became a woman who honored herself completely. And in that transformation, their love fulfilled its highest purpose. The mystery that remains. Yet even with all the growth, all the integration, all the gratitude, one mystery remains. Why her? Why him? Why that exact meeting at that exact moment in time? No analysis can fully answer this. Some call it fate, some call it soul contracts, some call it archetypal resonance. Jung himself might have called it synchronicity, the meaningful meeting of inner and outer worlds. Perhaps that is the beauty of it. Not everything must be explained. Some loves are meant to be lived, to be lost, and to remain eternal in memory. Not because they lasted, but because they changed us forever. The closing image. And so the story ends, not with reunion, not with despair, but with quiet reverence. She walks forward in her sovereignty. He walks forward in his awakening. And between them lies the invisible thread of a love that did not need to last to be eternal. Because real love does not always give us what we want, but it always gives us what we need. If this story stirred something in you, if you saw yourself in the woman who chose herself, or in the man who was awakened through love and loss, then don't let the journey stop here. Subscribe now to receive more reflections on love, self-discovery, and the hidden psychology of our most powerful connections. Because every story we explore together isn't just about them, it's about us. And each step into awareness is a step closer to living and loving with truth. Subscribe today, and let's keep walking this path of awakening together.